Hi folks, how you doing? I'm currently sitting in the Old Fighting Cocks in Oakengates, and I'd like to tell you a story. It's a story that I discovered in a local newspaper while researching this pub, and it's how this pub and how the community around it helped change things in Oakengates in Telford for the better. And it's actually something that's still used today, and had it not been for the community coming together, making their suggestions, and essentially having an event in this pub in 1874, things for Oakengates could be very different. It's a story about how community comes together to better society, and it's a story about how I suppose corporations and capitalists always try to penny pinch, and they don't really care about life. But hopefully if you stay with me, and if you like history and you like pubs, you should find this quite interesting. So without further ado, I'll get straight to it. What happened was, whilst drinking in this pub, I decided to research some of the history, and one of the stories I found out was a sad story of a gentleman called George Downs, who was killed on the railway line just a short walk from here, and the inquest into his death was held in this pub. Now, this pub is the oldest pub in Oakengates. I believe it goes back to the 1700s. It burnt down and was rebuilt in the early 1800s. But in 1874, there was an inquest in this pub into the death of George Downs at the railway line at Oakengate Station. And because of that inquest, it led to changes that we still have today in 2025. Fatal accident on the railway at Oakengates. On Monday last, J. Bidlake Esquire held an inquest at the Fighting Cocks, Oakengates, on the body of George Downs, grocer, who met with his death under the circumstances stated in the following evidence. Benjamin Downs, grocer, St. George's, deposed. I am brother of the deceased. He was at my house on Saturday evening and left about 6 o'clock. He left a horse and trap at my house and said he should go to Mr. Holmes and return for the horse and trap. He had a friend with him who he was going to accompany to the station at Oakengates. He took a dog with him from my shop. The deceased was 20 years of age. Samuel Purcell. I was at the London and North Western station at Oakengates on Saturday evening, about 6:40. I was standing with my arms against the gatepost at the level crossing and saw deceased and a friend of his coming over the line. The deceased said to his friend, "Look sharp," and turned around to see if his dog was following him. As he turned, I saw him struck by the engine of the goods train coming from the direction of Hadley. He must have seen the engine, as he was within 5 yards of it when I heard him say, "Look sharp." The gates across the road were closed. William Jones, fireman of the goods train. We reached Oakengates about 6:40. When we were at the distance, signalled the driver, blew the whistle. And when about 10 or 20 yards from the gate, the driver blew the whistle again. The porter then showed the white light for us to come. We were not running more than 4 or 5 miles an hour. I saw 2 men at the crossing. One darted across and escaped, and the other was caught by the engine. John Cope, porter at the station. I was on duty on Saturday evening. My usual hours are from 6:30 to 9 p.m. My duty is on a train passing to stand on the 6 foot and prevent people crossing. I stood there when the train in question came up on Saturday night. I saw the deceased come up. He stood at the wicket calling his dog. The deceased crossed first and turned round to look after his dog. When the train came up and caught the deceased, I shouted several times. William Bolger, Samuel Whitaker and William Poynton gave collaborative evidence, after hearing which the jury returned the verdict of accidentally killed, to which they attached the following recommendation. The jury was unanimous of the opinion that a footbridge should be erected over the level crossing at Oakengate Station in order to afford passengers the opportunity to cross over instead of passing over the line. Furthermore, that at present the considerably large amount of traffic is, in the opinion of the jury, dangerous to human life. It's actually only once you cross the bridge now that you kind of realise just how dangerous it is when you look back at what would have probably been the old road layout. there was actually quite a few incidents in this area, and obviously there was a lot of industry, a lot of goods coming through, and obviously you think about it, there wasn't much lighting, dark trains. People also didn't understand the speed and the power of trains, but this is the old road going up the hill, and it's kind of a diagonal now. Obviously nowadays we cross over train tracks straight over them, but a lot of people back in the day would have gone diagonal, and diagonal at this point here is into town and into where the pub is. You can't see it now because of the new build, but you can see in the direction of Hadley, and from the footage earlier from the bridge, how quickly a train, even at a slow speed, sneaks up on you. And even with that bright orange train today, you hardly spot it until it's there. Imagine that with a dark train, twilight. It could have been, well, it wasn't could have been, it was obviously a very, very dangerous spot. This is some photographs of the area. This one in particular isn't the actual station, it's another station that was nearby, but you can see that what were referred to the wickets, I believe that just to be the wooden fence. And this was 1905, I believe this photo was taken, and it just shows you how dangerous these level crossings were. Yes, because of those changes, there is a footbridge at Oakengates, a footbridge that I actually walked over today to get to this pub. So I'm researching this project over the last few weeks. I did discover another incident that happened just a few miles away down the road in Footbridge on the way to Hadley. And in that incident, it happened 10 years after the tragic incident with George Downs here in Oakengates. The jury of the inquest actually said that the railway companies should do more, but they also knew and they mentioned that their hands were tied, and that the Act of Parliament and legally all the railway companies had to do was provide a level crossing and gates. And the railway companies basically argued that they'd done all they could by putting up gates and a level crossing, and there was no need for them to do a bridge. And if people decided to cross the railway anyway, then it was their own fault. And it's quite sad, really, because we see certain things like that happen in society today. And it makes you think that when a lot of people talk about deregulating, we must remember that there's a reason these regulations will come into place. There's a reason regulations are here, and it's because over the years, throughout history, we've decided that certain things should be safer and should be better, and actually protecting human life is better than profits and greed. But sadly, in 1874, profits and greed reigned and human life was cheap. And therefore, it took 30 years from the moment they recommended a railway bridge in Oakengates because of deaths. It took 30 years before they finally built one. And we can see this from the newspaper records, because in 1892, the railway company put out a tender for bridges to be built over numerous locations in the UK, one of which was the station at Oakengates. 30 years it took after a death here for a corporation to finally act, but they did. And because they did, in 2025, we still have a railway bridge here today. That railway bridge has since been upgraded, and there's a new one slightly further up the line, which is obviously accessible for wheelchair users, bikes and everything else. But it's still nice to see the original railway bridge at Oakengate Station still there. You can still walk over it, and it's there because in 1874 a gentleman called George Downs was sadly killed by a train, and the jury recommended that a railway bridge be erected in Oakengates. 30 years later the railway bridge was erected, and it's still there today. Yeah, thanks for watching, and also a big thank you to a few channels actually who have inspired me, I think, obviously, from watching this video. There's some channels that since the pandemic actually I've been watching, and I've loved the history element, I've loved the pub element, and I think they're one of the big reasons that over the last 12 months or so I've actually gone out to various different places and filmed and started to socialise again in pubs. And I hope more people do this, because pubs are a great place and history is wonderful, and I've kind of hopefully have incorporated the two. So big thank you to WC21 Productions Limited. I love the name. I really do. Tweedy Pubs, and obviously Tweedy Outdoors, and other Tweedy channels that I'm sure are available. Paul Whitewick, guy, I just admire this guy so much. And Honest Places, honestly, Yeah, what a guy that he is. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd have a drink in some of those pubs, but I'm glad he has. But honestly, all of you should come to Oakengates. And if there isn't a pub for you, an honest pub, there's definitely a couple of them. There's definitely a few real ale houses, and there's bags of history. And I'll challenge you to this: if you don't find a decent pub and some decent history within 5 miles of the Oakengates area, I'll pay for your train ticket, guys, to go back home to wherever you're coming from, because it's really good around there. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for inspiring me to make this video and hopefully start a new channel, exploring my local area and discovering the history and the lost stories that, well, hopefully they won't be lost any longer. So until next time, take care, and I'm going to enjoy my tea and probably watch some more YouTube. So till the next time, bye for now.